Somewhere in these woods, a man was buried alive, and they say you could still hear him. A scream, desperate, panicked, rising from the earth. But did it ever happen? This is Benthall Edge, rising above the Ironbridge Gorge, quite peaceful, calm, almost idyllic at times. But in the 19th century, this was an industrial landscape. There were kilns and furnaces, fire, smoke and noise filled the air. And somewhere out here, a man would be left to die. Early one morning, a kiln manager was walking his usual route to work. He was well known in the area and apparently a well-liked and decent chap. That particular morning, he was carrying the weekly wages, which would have been a hefty sum of cash. And then without warning, he was attacked. A group of men emerged from the darkness, beat him to the ground, took the money and began tying him to a tree. But in the dim morning light, he realised he knew these men. He was being attacked by his own workers. He begged them to stop. He even offered them his own money if only they wouldn't steal the wages. He called them by name. And that was a mistake. By naming the men, he had sealed his own fate, because they'd been recognised. That meant if he lived, they'd surely hang. The men panicked and the beating intensified. They dragged him, bloodied, bruised and unconscious, to a nearby pit and threw him in. They rolled a large stone over the entrance and fled, leaving him for dead. But he wasn't dead. He woke up in the pit, in the dark, bloodied, bruised and bound, but alive for now. He screamed for help again and again with every last ounce of his breath. But above him, the working day had already begun, drowning out his cries. His only option was to use what strength he had left to try and move the rock that had entombed him. And he did manage to move it, just enough for it to slip. When he failed to show up at work without the wages, a search began, but it wasn't for several days until they finally found him, down at the bottom of the pit, bloodied, beaten and broken. There were no witnesses, no arrests. His killers had escaped into the early morning gloom. For years the truth remained buried, until finally one of the men involved supposedly gave a deathbed confession. Whether he'd been racked by years of guilt, or scared of what was to come, he finally told his family everything. Walk through the edge today and you might see him, a Victorian gentleman, calm and composed, as if completely unaware of what's about to happen to him. But others have reported something far more unsettling, a scream coming from deep underground, finally able to be heard now that the works here have fallen silent. The last sound of a man who never made it out. So, a brutal story, but did it ever really happen? I've found it referenced in blogs, paranormal databases, and even in a BBC article. But when you start to dig a little bit deeper, that's when things start to fall apart. There's no names or dates for either the attack itself or any of the reported hauntings. So with no official records of the crime, no contemporary newspaper articles, all we have is that convenient confession. And without that, we'd barely have a story at all. But stories like this don't just appear from nowhere. I mean, this was industrial land, and crimes like that did happen. And this isn't the only woodland to have a screaming ghost. In Kent, the Daring Woods are known as the Screaming Woods. People hear cries in the night. Some say it was a man buried alive in a clay pit. Others say it was a highwayman who was brutally murdered. And then there's the rather suspect massacre in 1948. Although that's almost certainly a made-up internet story. And in Iran, there's the Mashhad screaming forest, inhabited by the jinn who reportedly scream at night. Of course, there are plenty of rational explanations for the screams. Foxes, owls, and even the wind can make noises that have been mistaken for unearthly screams. In America, you've got the bobcat and the cougar whose shouts sound eerily like a woman's scream. And even here specifically, there is a power station just a few hundred metres away, and noises like the machinery or the air brakes on trucks or even the rail line that ran into there until about 15 years ago could easily make sounds that would be distorted by the woods and sound very much like a scream. And that's before you get into things like infrasound, which has been shown to have effects on us psychologically and has been suggested in many reported hauntings. So the woods are clearly fertile ground for scary stories, whether as cautionary tales against real dangers, or perhaps even holdovers from back when we were still skittish monkeys and the trees contained plenty of predators. And somehow that still has an effect on us today and has the ability to put us on edge, especially at night. But of course, if you've ever experienced anything creepy happening in the woods, I would be curious to hear about it.